Hello there, Maverick Traders. This is Imri, and I'm back here today with an educational video that outlines a critical component of what I think should go into every trader's trading plan. I call this component the PreFlight Checklist, and it's cribbed directly from what pilots do before they take off. So before a plane can take off safely, a pilot is going to go through a pre-flight checklist. So they have a checklist of items that they need to check off to ensure that enough parts of the plane are in sufficient working order that the aircraft is airworthy and can safely carry passengers to its final destination. I really don't see trading as being any different. You definitely want to make sure that you have your own pre-flight checklist, and that checklist should be specific to your individual and unique trading plan. That pre-flight checklist is a quick-fire way of ensuring whether or not you have the necessary ingredients for what is a high-quality trading outcome. Now, some people can have different approaches to their checklist. For example, there are some traders who have a more flexible personality type, right? Say, you don't have to weigh each item on your pre-flight checklist the same. You can award different points to different items, and all you need to get a green light to take a trade is if you hit a sufficient point total. So for example, let's say you have 8 items on your pre-flight checklist, and you need a point score total of 80 or higher in order to have a green light to take a trade. Well, you would go through each item on your pre-flight checklist. However you score those items will be up to you, and if you get a net score of 80, you have the trade. That's one way of looking at it. My way is a little bit more rigid. I only have 4 items on my personal pre-flight checklist, which I'm going to go through with you in just a minute. And if I can't answer each pre-flight checklist each question on my pre-flight checklist must be answered in a very satisfactory manner. And if I can't come up with a good answer to one of those questions, I can't move on to the next item on my checklist, which means I ultimately don't have a trade. So I'm going to go through those 4 items with you, at least on my personal trading plan, so you have a sense of how it is I look at the market and the process that I follow that gets me into and out of a trade. So number 1, I have to be able to answer the question, what is the trend? Question number 2 is, what is the market structure that I'm working with? Number 3 is momentum. And then number 4 finally is, do I have the criteria necessary in order to fill out my test? Test stands for time frame, entry, stop loss, and target. Okay, so I've been taking a close look at the dollar-Canada currency pair, and I think it's very exciting for a number of reasons. All right, so while I believe that we will see a higher US dollar relative to the Canadian dollar over the next likely several weeks, how we get there is what really determines whether or not I have a trade that I can take in accordance with my pre-flight checklist. So I can answer the first question on my pre-flight checklist, which is, what is the trend? And specifically, I'm looking at this movement here. Now, I would consider this a strong bullish move. Yes, we've traded into resistance, but if I look at the last strong move that carried the market to new highs, it was also to the upside. So when I think of trend, all right, now for those of you that have seen a couple of my videos, I like to look at trend through the filter or through the lens of Elliott wave theory. Elliott wave theory tells me that if I can count 5 waves utilizing the rules and guidelines of the wave principle, which is a whole other discussion, but if I can count 5 waves, that points me in the direction of that larger underlying trend. And guess what? I can count 5 waves up here, which means this was a corrective setback. And I can count another 5 waves up from here, which tells me that the trend is bullish according to my system, according to my personal trading plan. The second question is, what is the market structure that I'm working with? Now, this is where I have not quite a red light, but I have a yellow light. And I'm going to explain what that means. So I have a couple different interpretations of this market that I'm working with, and I need the market to provide me with more price information before I can eliminate one of those possibilities. The interesting thing is that the pattern that I'm tracking is going to be the same. All right, so I have two possibilities, one pattern. The question is of what degree of trend is that pattern unfolding, and I'll walk you through that right now. So the pattern in question is called a flat correction. In classical technical chartists might call it just a range-bound market or a sideways market, but utilizing the language of Elliott wave theory, I can get a little bit more precise. All right, so a flat correction has three waves. And those waves are typically labeled A, B, and C. So the first possibility suggests that this is a larger flat. This first red arrow is my wave A. This second red arrow is my wave B. And this third red arrow is going to be my wave C. That scenario would see us test roughly around the 128.20 level in dollar Canada. Okay, now this would be a larger flat correction. So that would be at the highest degree of trend. The second possibility is that this is the start of a new bullish phase, and I'm tracking a smaller degree flat pattern, in which case this arrow is wave A, this arrow is wave B, and we're currently close to completing wave C. If that's the case, then I should know pretty shortly. I wouldn't want to see the market break too much below where we are right now in order to complete the flat. And then I can move on. If I get confirmation that the flat is completed, I can move on to my question number 3, which is what is momentum, and then what is the test. So let's assume that I'm very confident, because I want to take you through what my other questions look like from a practical standpoint. So let's assume that I believe this flat is finished and I can move on to question number 3, which is momentum. Well, that's where I look at two momentum studies, the relative strength index and the MACD. Both momentum studies tell me that momentum is bearish right now. The MACD is sloped down, although we're above the zero line, the moving averages have sloped down, and this is further supported by the relative strength indicator breaking sharply to the downside. So even if I believe that the flat pattern is complete and I'm going to have a sustained move higher immediately, I would not be able to proceed to question number 4, which is what is my test? And the reason I wouldn't be able to proceed is because I have a conflict between the bullish pattern, the bullish trend that I'm tracking, and the momentum studies I look at, which are bearish. I need everything to be in alignment for me to take a trade. So right now, there's no way that I can be long dollar Canada. I have to wait for the price action to develop in order for me to be able to answer satisfactorily that I have bullish, not just a bullish pattern or bullish market structure I'm working with, but also bullish momentum. But let's assume that I do have bullish momentum, so I can proceed to the fourth step here, which is my test. What is my time frame, entry, stop loss, and target? Well, I think this pattern develops very well on the 4-hour time frame, and I'm just going to look at how long this leg took to complete. So this leg started on June 8th, and it completed on June 17th. So it took a couple trading weeks for us to get there. And that move was approximately 4.5% move, 560 pips. So I think it's not unreasonable to expect another 560 pip move at least to the upside, which would take me a little bit beyond 134. I'd be looking at around 134.50, 135 potentially, if this market wants to get quite exuberant to the upside. And I do think it's reasonable to expect that such a move would take at least 2.5 weeks to a month to unfold. So that's my time frame. The entry, I'm going to look for a strong candlestick pattern or a break of a key level. Again, I don't have those things, so I can't concretely give you an example. But let's just say I wanted to enter this trade at the market or close to the market. So let's say around 129.69. I'm going to place a stop loss, perhaps just below these lows here at 129.20, and then my target would be all the way up, let's say at 134.50. So using the position field calculator in TradingView, such a trade could potentially look like this. So now I've answered my test. All right, and that's like, okay, I have a great risk reward ratio. Everything looks good to me. I'm okay hanging on to the trade for potentially up to 2.5 weeks, if not longer, if I need to, if the trade is profitable. I have my entry planned out. I know where my stop is, and I know what my target is. So I have all the ingredients here, just pretending that I can move through questions 2 and 3 here to get to number 4. Now that I have all 4 of those things and I've completed my test, I can move on to position sizing. And then finally, I can set up my bracket orders in my trading platform, and then I'll be in the market with some capital at risk. So regardless of whether your pre-flight checklist is 4 questions or 5 questions, 10 questions, personally, I recommend keeping it the shorter the better, but ensure that whatever your trading plan is, ensure that whatever your trading philosophy is, you can break it down into a handy, concise, simple pre-flight checklist. Because the reality is, if your trading plan is 2 or 3 pages long, or even if it's 1 page long, what are the odds that you're going to go through that trading plan line by line, word for word, when you're actually sitting in front of the charts and the market's moving and you feel pressure to make a decision? You're going to skip things. It's inevitable that you're going to skip things. So one of the easiest ways to ensure you're following your trading plan on a consistent basis is to follow a method like my pre-flight checklist. I follow this method on every single trade I take, and guess what? It keeps me on the right side of the market more often than not. So thanks, traders. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.